Well, good evening, everyone. It's been a while. We missed last week. We missed you. We promise we did. We will be getting started in just a minute, and as soon as we get Romney in here. But till then, welcome to the pre-show of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. This is where we talk about the stories that almost made the cut. But tonight we have a pretty consistent schedule from the last 2 weeks that we need to get into. So I will say a lot of things made the cut this week, and it's a sad prospect for all of you. And the first thing I'm going to bring up is that didn't make the list is Michael Bay is apparently producing a Dora the Explorer movie with Muppets writer Nick Stoller.
So somebody watched the College Humor video from 5 years ago and decided, let's do that.
Yeah, pretty much. I would actually say they watched the Robot Chicken parody that they tried to do where they tried to actually make like a trailer with Dora the Explorer stuff. Yeah, that's what they did. Not a whole lot to go into there. It's a dumb idea. I don't think this is even going to get off the ground, but hey, Michael Bay has the clout. Maybe he can make it work.
Yeah.
There's one thing I can guarantee.
It'll get off the ground. Yeah. No. Like, it'll get off the ground, but it'll probably bomb hard, no pun intended, just because, well, the primary audience of Dora the Explorer is preschoolers. And if you're not going to make it for preschoolers, no one else is going to see it anyway.
Okay, don't say it's going to bomb, because, look, you and me said last night should have bombed, and what happened? It actually was successful financially. Yeah. So before we start making that prediction, let's just play it safe here for a second. Let's back it up and say it just shouldn't happen.
I never said last night was going to bomb. I knew last night would probably underperform here domestically, but do very well overseas.
We said we hoped it would bomb.
Oh yeah, everybody hoped it'd bomb, but I knew it wouldn't. I figured it's still going to do well overseas again. It's probably in China.
It sucks so bad, and unfortunately, we still get requests every now and then on Drak and Shadow to do it. And at that point, I think me and Alex are both in agreement when we say get us to 100 subscribers, and then you can vote for it. Until then, no. We like ours.
There you go. Yeah.
The next story that we got tonight is this one I actually kind of wish would have made it, but unfortunately it didn't make the cut, and that is so I'm trying to look for the guy's name. Let's see. So a guy by the name of, he goes by the online name Multi Lock On, actually earned his dream job at 343 Studios. So he's a dedicated Halo fan and Halo Mac maker. And unfortunately, he also made his opinions very clear about 343 Studios on a number of occasions. And after he got hired, he was then abruptly fired as soon as they went into the background check. Because that's where they get you every time. And so unfortunately, he got to report. I mean, obviously he got to report, yay, I got my job. I'm going to work my dream job. I'm going to work for 343 on Halo. And then eventually, I want to say like a couple of days later, he put out a very big statement saying, this is embarrassing, but I've been canned. Because they didn't know that I had said that until now. So, sorry.
Yeah, sucks.
And at that point, I mean, he's even expressed his sadness in the regard. Like he said that, you know, he'll make his way up the gaming development ladder regardless, but that he's sad because this was his dream job. He wanted to work on Halo, and I do believe him for it, but I think there's a lesson to be learned for all of us, which is please watch what you say online, because what you say stays. What you do stays. And this is no exception to it. So, I mean, this guy lost his dream job because he decided to run his mouth one day.
Yeah, there's a pretty good quote from the Social Network movie. Rooney Mara's character says, you didn't write it in pencil. You wrote it on the internet, which is permanent ink. I'm totally not quoting this correctly.
But you're not wrong.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, again, I've had this speech with who knows how many people, especially people who like to do selfies and whatever. What happens on the internet stays on the internet, period. It doesn't matter if you delete it. Somebody will be able to recreate it. Because as soon as you delete it, there's still a little bit of data, little bit, and all it has to do is be reconstructed. Which, here's the thing, guys, hackers love doing that. And then you get in trouble. So here's an idea. How about if we don't like our bosses, we tell them, we talk about them at the pub where it's not going to get shared.
Yeah. Don't let yourself have a paper trail.
No. Please don't. So the next story that we're actually going to get into, because one or two of you guys actually did leave this one. Justice League's runtime has been revealed, and it looks like, I think it's about a good hour has been cut from it. So it was supposed to be like a 3.5 hour movie, and I believe now it's down to 2.5.
I think it's shorter than that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like an hour and a half. I think it's over 2.
I think it's just about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Or let me see. I'm going to pull it up right now.
But I know the original cut was like, I think it was 3. I think they were pushing 3 hours for Justice League. So
okay, it's 121 minutes, so it's just about 2 hours.
But a little over, yeah. So
Yeah.
At that point, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? It's really too soon to call, honestly, guys, because here's the thing. We've all made this claim. Batman v Superman was far too long for what it tried to do. So who knows? Maybe it's actually a good idea that this thing is getting cut down to 2 hours so that they can focus. We won't know until we actually see the film. Can we all agree on that? We won't know until we actually get our hands on the film and see it. I know that sucks for a lot of people, but I mean, unless you have a disagreement with me, Alex.
No, I think sounds about right. I'm surprised too. I thought it was going to be like 3 hours, but I think 2 hours seems right.
Yeah, I don't actually hate the idea of it running that long. In fact, I think that's probably the best thing to do, considering the fact that we had the debacle that was Batman v Superman. And one of the things that people have actually complimented Wonder Woman for is its length, that it's shorter. So maybe it's a good idea to step in this direction. And at least give us a 2 hour movie. And at least we'll look on the bright side, Alex. We only have to sit through a 2 hour movie, not a 3 hour movie. Yay!
Yeah. Actually, Justice League will now be shorter than even Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman clocks in at 2 hours, 21 minutes.
It does. So there you go. Let's see. So the next story that we actually have that didn't, and guys, we're talking about the ones that didn't make the podcast. So you guys are getting this exclusive content, I guess is the best way that I can actually put it. So you guys can have fun with it. The other one is Hayao Miyazaki may have given us the official title for his final film. Right. Sure. Right, Hayao. Totally believe you.
Okay, perhaps we should say what said title is.
Go ahead and say the title.
Okay, I'm gonna. All right, so I'm pulling it up right now. I had to find the story again. All right, so Studio Ghibli director Hayao Miyazaki said the title and time frame for completion. Director expects to complete his Kimitachi wa do Ikuro ka, I guess How Do You Live is what it translates to. How Do You Live film. And he's expected to take about another 2 to 3 years on it.
Yep. Sure. This is your last film. Right. Fool me once, Miyazaki. Shame on you. Fool me 3 times. That's more than shame on me.
And you can't get fooled again.
Nope, can't do it again. I am now officially convinced that the only way that you get removed from this job is either A, security has to remove you, or you're just that brain in a jar in the basement. It's the way it goes. Oh, come on. We're all thinking it.
Yeah.
He's got to be like Walt Disney, man. Brain in a jar. It's got to happen. So that's, I'm not saying that I won't see this movie, but I'm not buying the line again that this is his last one. He will never make another one after that. Bull to the shite. He is going to make more. He is going to make more until literally he can lift his hand no more. And you are not fooling me again. And I think Alex joins me on that. Fool me once.
Yeah, I mean, the dude is 76, though. So, really, unless he lives another 2 decades, this very likely could truly be his final feature in all seriousness.
Have you ever seen Roshan Z?
No.
A frightening thought just came to me. Roshan Z follows a lot of elderly folks that are literally mechanically bound to their beds. That's gonna be Hayao Miyazaki. He is literally on life support in his bed, and he is still animating cells. That's creepy.
Yeah.
That's the way it's gonna go. Let's see. So, yep, we have the final film, and also this one people wanted me to cover, but unfortunately, there's just not too much to cover on it. Street Fighter V and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite producer. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but let me get it to you guys. Peter Combo Fiend Rosas has parted ways with Capcom. So he was actually the producer on Street Fighter V and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and has basically said, I've been fortunate enough to work on the games that shaped my life, a definite dream come true, but now I feel it's time for the next generation to be able to do the same. So at that point, a lot of people, I still am seeing stories every now and then just going, no, that was really, really nice. He was actually canned. And no, it looks like he legitimately stepped down, and for good reasons, to let somebody else kind of take the reins after him. So I'm going to say thank you, Combo Fiend. Thank you so much for working on at least one good game. Street Fighter V fans, I'm looking at you guys. That's not the one I'm talking about. So I'll at least give you that, and best luck in your future endeavors. Wow, I sound like WWE when I say that now. He got future endeavored, Alex. I don't know how we should feel about that. And of course, this one was silly enough that it didn't make the cut, but I couldn't see us talking about it tonight. It's official. Microsoft has stopped manufacturing the Kinect. I guess my first question is, what took you so long?
Wonderful question.
It is a wonderful question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It took you this long to discontinue the Kinect after all the hatred? Guys, there are still Kinects in Best Buys that just sit there and collect dust. Nobody's buying that thing. I mean, my wife wants one just because she wants to mess around with it. But no, there's not. Are there still any games being made for Kinect? I don't think so. Where was like the last dedicated Microsoft team? I'm sorry, I've interrupted you, Alex, a couple of times now.
That's fine. Yeah, I can't think of anything more that's being produced for Kinect. Oh, there's probably the one odd shovelware title out there, but let's.
Because we're not in the era anymore, guys, where the Kinect is bound to the Xbox One. I mean, obviously, I think we just barely had the release of the Xbox One X, or if it hasn't released by now, it's getting ready to. I don't even think that's launching with the dependency. I have the Xbox One Elite. I don't have to have a Kinect. I literally have virtually nothing that requires it. So I'm guessing that Kinect has not been a dependency thing for the Xbox One for at least that long. And yet, it took them this long to officially end production. Do you want to know what that means, people? That there were still Kinects being made in the factory until now.
Let's see. Last released game for
the Kinect pile.
Last released game for Kinect for Xbox One was Air Guitar Warrior in March 2017.
Air Guitar Warrior, huh? So Bill and Ted the Kinect game? Dude. That's what it took. That's why. That's the third Bill and Ted movie, by the way. Is Air Guitar Hero. Are we all agreed on that?
Yeah.
That's the third Bill and Ted movie. I think we can all agree on this.
I love this. By developer and publisher called Virtual Air Guitar Company.
Because of course, why not?
Oh, I feel truly sorry for whoever put their money into such a company that wouldn't last 3 minutes.
So you feel bad for Microsoft?
I don't think it's Microsoft. I'm just wondering what gullible venture capitalists whoever founded this company, they must have founded a really, really gullible venture capitalist to invest in their company.
Let's just go with my assumption right now. Are you ready, Alex?
All right.
That dude who kickstarted a potato salad for $10. That's who got this going. I have no proof on this, but it might as well have been. It might as well have been. It's so dumb. I wonder if they'll give away Kinect bundles to get rid of all the inventory not in use. Nope. A couple of days ago, I was actually looking around for the Xbox One X just to see if it was out there, and I didn't see it. Which my guess is like it's either coming out this weekend or next week. And I saw the only bundles that I saw were game bundles. I literally did not see even the basic bundles that came with the Kinect on the shelves anymore. Like I said, the only Kinects that I saw on the shelf, and this was at a Best Buy, so I mean, you take that for what it's worth. But the only Kinect I saw was just sitting there. It had a nice little chunk of dust on it. It was like, yeah, this is not getting touched. Nobody's interested in this in this particular stuff anymore. So sorry, but I think it was probably the better idea, but I think this should have happened like 2 years ago. I think the only
NBA 2K18.
Go ahead.
NBA 2K18, I guess, is Kinect compatible for 360.
For 360.
Yeah.
Okay, so no,
it's still making 360 games. Wow.
Because only EA. Only freaking EA. Bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum. Sorry, no. I already explained this to you, Shiro. This is going to be very simple. The ET pile or the ET dump is going to get replaced with the Kinect dump. And then the Kinect dump will be dug up 20 years from now. And that will be the historical artifact. And then whatever failed horribly in that era will now be in that dump.
In the future, James Rolfe's and when that happens, James Rolfe's daughters will make their own angry video game nerds.
They're going to be like the Wachowski brothers. They're going to work together, or I guess the Wachowski sisters now. But
yeah, the Rolfe sisters.
Yeah, there you go. The Rolfe. Well, no. Then they'll be the Rolfe brothers.
Oh,
because if we're following the chain of events with the Wachowskis, they were the Wachowski brothers, then became the Wachowski sisters. Now it'll be the Rolfe sisters going to the Rolfe brothers.
Right.
Or actually, we'll be 20 years down the road, so it'll probably be the Rolfe. Because that.
And here's Romney.
Hello, Romney.
Hello.
So
didn't mean to cut it as close as I did. Let's just say I got a little tied up.
Nah, don't worry about it. I honestly thought I was going to be late to the podcast tonight because I was off at a wedding. And we'll mention that at the beginning of the podcast, guys. But the other thing that I want to bring up, because I swear if I see another email on this, guys, I'm watching BlizzCon. You didn't need to tell me about the announcement. Yes, I know. I'm not going to suck it, douchebag. It ain't happening. And Alex and Romney are like, what the heck? So it was official today. They announced WoW Legacy servers. And so at that point, people are already asking, are you going to do a Nostalrius Revisited video? Probably not. Probably not. But I've already gotten the, I'm going to say about 3 or 4, just off the top of my head, 3 or 4 suck it douchebag emails with that link. So there you go. Some people just don't know when to let it quit.
Well, as the overplayed Disney song goes, let it go.
But hey, we can't hold it back anymore. Yes, I saw the announcement, guys, and I'm happy for those who want it. I will say this, and this is probably going to get put into a BlizzCon video too. The whole Nostalrius experience has soured me so much to the idea of private servers, legacy servers, all of that, that no, I'm not experimenting with it. I'm not interested. Just because every time I think about the possibility of doing that, I just look back on that whole experience and go, yeah, this is an experience I can do without. So that's going to be a thing. That's kind of messed up when they closed all those WoW Legacy servers. Well, they haven't closed them yet. Are you talking about the private servers?
I'm guessing, because wasn't that the legacy servers? They were the private ones were the legacy.
Got announced today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the servers that were closed that we reported on were private servers, but the key thing to remember, people, is that those were in direct violation of Blizzard's terms of service.
Yes.
That's the distinction here.
Yes. And the only reason that companies like Elysium have been able to make their servers go through is because, well, they're based in Russia, which is a little bit hard to expedite that process. I don't know if you guys can actually hear. She's been a raunchy pain in the butt all day. Yeah, so that's the only reason that hasn't been expedited. But any new servers that happen in the US or any other place where a cease and desist has to be enacted, it's getting enacted right off the bat. So, and part of that also, I think, is because of this announcement that World of Warcraft Classic is officially a thing, and you're going to get some official Blizzard Legacy servers. So I guess my only question on this matter is, how many people who said they were going to come back when this officially became a Blizzard thing are actually going to come back? Because I'm going to guarantee you very little, because they are going to require a payment, and you aren't going to like that. So this is probably going to be a financial venture that won't last long.
Yeah, because, again, servers are very, very tricky to maintain. That was something that Aldo even went into detail about. You have to have the resources, the computers that maintain it.
To build, to maintain, all of that is an expensive process.
Mm-hmm.
And I will actually say this. Do you want to know the one piece that I got to savor at that announcement? That the same guy you called a horrific douche nozzle, because he literally looked you in the eye and said, it's not probable for us to do that. And everyone went, guess who announced it? Same douchey McNozzle. Right there. He got to come out and say, oh yeah, I'd like to talk to you about ice cream. And you want to know what I think you guys' favorite ice cream flavor is? Vanilla. And at that point, all the private server junkies went, you son of a bitch. So, like I said a couple of years ago, and I'm going to say it now, J. Allen Brack wins. Flawless victory. Brutality. Fatality. Friendship. Oh, my. All right, I'm fine. I'm good now.
Yeah, just my brain trying to process all of that. Like, what would be the input command for such a fancy way to end the match? Because that...
GG.
I mean...
If we're talking Blizzard here, GG.
Yeah. I'm curious to see if Nether
big old fat piece of GG up your ass.
Yeah, it's just I'm looking at that. I'm just like, okay, you'd have to like do like a bunch of quarter circles, a bunch of kicks, while all within the short time limit without hitting your opponent. I'm just like, okay, if that's like an actual thing,
I want a GIF now of J. Allen Brack in like a Street Fighter V interface where he's pulling off the ultra hyper combo finish, KO, and it's all because he announced WoW Legacy servers when. Guys, I'm not even joking here. The level of hatred this guy got for having to be the guy to come out and legit and be honest and say, we can't make this work right now. I mean, even the former employees that supported the 30,000 signatures petition came out against him and said he was a royal douche nozzle for the way he said it. And this guy got to have that one over on you because he got to announce that, yeah, we're doing it. I laughed. I laughed hard when this happened. Because J. Allen Brack wins. G freaking G. I think they probably could have just brought 40-man Nax back instead of full-blown Nax. Yes, they probably could, but then people would have complained because it was too easy. So, there you go. All right. Before I blow everybody's gasket again, are we ready to go?
Ready.
All right.
Okay.
Sound speed.
Mic check. Mic check. Jiminy Christmas. I'm still coming in quiet. I really need to
Well,
replace this game.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
I'm just coming in quiet on my recording.
Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. It's just me that needs to replace the mic. That's all. Okay, here we go. Actually, let me bring up the agenda first. Okay. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, November 3rd, 2017. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drak. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support the podcast, subscribing to it, submitting it to your friends, all that awesome stuff. And I hope everybody's had an awesome week so far because, well, we actually had to skip a week. And I'm just going to go ahead and address that really quick. The reason that got brought up, I only said that it was a family reason on Twitter, and I only did that out of respect for Alex because him and me were going to miss. There was a death in the family, and so we had to go take care of that. That's why we didn't actually hold a podcast because I would have left Romney alone, and unfortunately, we didn't have enough backup to be able to support him. So there you go. That's why we actually missed, but we're back, and we've had even more activity happen, which is funny because you could technically say last week, the holiday video game season officially started with a whopping 4 releases that I know of that came out that week. And then literally tonight, we are on the first night of BlizzCon 2017 with major announcements there, but we're not going to get too much into them. I actually got videos going on into them later on, although one thing we might broach if we have enough time. I don't think we will because there's still a lot of stuff to go into. So much so that I haven't even introduced my panel tonight. And let's go ahead and start there. So here's my panel of fellow awesome YouTubers, fellow great content creators, fellow awesome guys in general. Let's go ahead and start things off with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost, a host of Romney's Reviews, From the Shelf, Monster Clash, and also Rhapsody in Cinema. How you doing tonight, Romney?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been enjoying this week as I actually was able to get this week off from my work. So I've basically been enjoying my vacation as much as I can to give my brain a break, to just kind of relax and get back to things that I've been kind of neglecting. If some of you have been following me on Twitter, you've been noticing that I've been posting word counts, as this year I am taking part in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. The challenge being to write a 50,000 word novel starting November 1st and ending on November 30th. I just checked my word count. I'm at about 4,500 words or so currently. And so, yeah, I've been getting an early jump on that as well today.
Did you say that there actually was like a set subject you had to do this for? I can't remember.
No, there isn't really a set subject. It's just basically the challenge is to write a novel. It doesn't even have to be fiction. You can do nonfiction. You're not limited to any genre. I'm just limiting the genre that I'm doing just as more of a creative challenge for myself. But there isn't really any limits. It's just what you basically have 1 month to try writing 50,000 words in a word processor of your choice. I'm currently at a little over 4,000 currently, and so I'm making decent progress.
Very nice. And then we're also being joined by the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Shorts, who has been so gracious as to step out of the shadows tonight to help us out with this story, especially out of the under the comforting shadow of his Black Rose poster right behind him. You guys are so gracious to have him. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Well, I'm very tired. It's been a very long week for me, unfortunately, and well, at least it's Friday finally. I get the weekend off, and I get quite a bit of next week off too. Just retail, what can you say? But definitely best thing that happened to me this today, in fact, is I got my copy finally of Drak GU Last Recode, the HD remaster of the GU trilogy from the PlayStation 2, now on PS4. Adam, you and I gotta go shopping this weekend, please.
We'll see what we can do, because if we go this weekend, we got to take my daughter with us, and I don't know if you want to do that, but we'll see what we can make work. But
yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they do this last year with you too? Like they prepped you for the Black Friday that was to come?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, if we're adding to like special things we got this week, I did also manage to get the Death Note all-in-one edition that came out recently, which is the entire manga in one giant murder weapon-sized tome.
And I got an amazing WoW. Oh wait, that WoW expansion's got some problems. Moving on. So this is going to be something that this is something I'm actually going to be dealing with the BlizzCon opening ceremony when people get into it. I was actually really, really excited until they came to the WoW announcement, and then I went, oh, I don't know if I want that. Oh.
Well, you got Mario Odyssey, so
I've got plenty of other games. So maybe this is for the best. Maybe with all of the WoW content that I actually have on the channel, maybe that I'm disappointed is not necessarily a bad thing, because then I can go move on to the other games that have been sitting on the shelf so patiently for so long. Who knows? I haven't worked all that out yet, but that's not what you guys are here. We're here to talk about some stories. And let's go ahead and get things started with a big correction that we actually need to do from 2 weeks ago. So if you watch the YouTube feed, because it's not actually on the official podcast, this was a story that didn't necessarily make our agenda. And it was simply because at that point we had a change.org petition from the ESRB that basically trying to make loot boxes gambling, and ergo have to ramp up the age requirement to be able to play them. And we had talk of an Activision patent going around, but we didn't know the details on that just yet. But you guys came out and you guys asked that we correct this. So here we go. These actually were connected. And the reason that they're connected is because what Activision's patent is basically patenting an algorithm within a matchmaking system. I'm not going to go too much into the details here, but to sum it up as best as we can, in the matchmaking system, if you're a brand new player, what this system would try to do is put you with a veteran player, one that's been playing for a long time, knows what they're doing, has items that you may want, and puts you up against them as a new player for you to get owned in order to incentivize you, at least this is the hope of the patent, to incentivize you to go into the microtransactions and buy the weapon that you want and all that stuff. So this was supposed to be a reach around kind of way of incentivizing you to buy into the microtransactions system. Okay. Because otherwise, if you didn't buy into it, then the matchmaking system would then put you up with a veteran player again, supposedly. We don't know. We don't actually know how many times this would actually play through. We don't, because here's the thing. According to Activision, and guys, I know that you guys don't want us to support this, but this is their official statement. Their official statement on this is that it is a 2015 patent, and it was simply to investigate, not necessarily to apply into their system. Okay? That is their statement. We have to take that at face value. I have no evidence saying that this matchmaking algorithm is in an Activision system, and here's the thing. The guilty culprits that get brought up are Activision games like Call of Duty, Destiny 2 is brought into that mix, and also included in that was Blizzard games Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, and not Hearthstone, but Blizzard Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm for their loot box systems. Okay, so that being said, let's get into our opinions on this particular system. To my knowledge, it's not implemented, but every gamer under the sun is trying to make sure that it never gets implemented. Given the information that I've given to you, Alex, what do you think about this system?
A lot of it, unfortunately, went over my head, I must admit. It's a lot to take in. But I'm not totally surprised to see a company like Activision pursue this technology, pursue it, and look into it more deeply. You know, it's the unfortunate fact microtransactions and stuff like this are becoming so very commonplace in games, and I think it's only going to get worse from here.
Well, and the counteraction to this algorithm, because again, I've seen no evidence saying that this is actually implemented, was to basically say in this change.org petition to make loot boxes or loot crates, whatever you want to call them, considered to be gambling. And then at that point, you raise up the ESRB age that's required to play this game, which, as we all know, we've all seen this in our lifetimes. When the age restriction gets higher, the sales on the game suffer. So at that point, this is basically to force the game companies to not put these systems into place and therefore get lower ratings. Okay.
Yeah,
so let me try and bring
I think an AO, though, personally, because the petition was calling specifically to give them an AO rating. I can kind of understand because it is essentially gambling, but I almost want to say a mature rating would qualify. Granted, almost anybody can play a mature rated game. It's not hard. Most kids already do. They play COD and stuff. So,
although I will say one thing in regards to your last statement. I'm going to give major props to my local GameStop, because when I actually went over to go pick up Wolfenstein 2 and Mario Odyssey, there were two little nice kids, really, that were below age, that were trying to get Grand Theft Auto, and they got carded. And they tried at least 3 times, maybe thinking that the person behind the counter would forget, and she kept on asking for an ID. So I'll at least give them credit, but you are right. There are a lot of kids out there that are still getting their hands on mature games that shouldn't get their hands on mature games. So let me paint this for you really quick, Alex. So at that point, we can kind of get your opinion. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you're not a shooter fan, but let's just say for the argument, you are.
Mm-hmm.
You just bought Call of Duty, and you're excited because this is a brand new Call of Duty and you get to play it, kind of thing. You go into the multiplayer, you're brand spanking noob. You have no idea what you're doing. You're just looking to have some fun, right? With 30 other people, have a great experience. You want to be a sniper. That's what you want to be in the game. But in order to be a good sniper, you need to have a specific sniper rifle. What this algorithm would say is it would put you with a veteran player who has your sniper rifle on the opposing side. So at that point, this guy could literally pick you off the entire game. And unless you went and bought microtransactions to get this rifle, you just have to sit here and deal with it, according to the internet argument. Again, we don't know how many times this algorithm would play in before another algorithm would take over. But if you had to go through this, Alex, what would be your gut reaction?
Yeah, I'd be pretty pissed off. You know, I think I recall hearing this argument too over the last few weeks about what this algorithm could very well lead to. And I'd be pretty pissed off, even as somebody who absolutely hates grinding in video games for gear or for leveling or whatever. I still would rather do that than have to pay out for more proper equipment. And that's the bullshit behind microtransactions. And I hate to say it, I feel like companies like, I don't know about Activision in particular, but EA definitely could be shady enough to try something that low, is to have an algorithm pin you against a more experienced, advanced player in a multiplayer game like Call of Duty and kind of use that to sweeten the deal to quickly buy yourself a quick rifle.
Yeah, when you see systems like this, the usual culprits do come up, which is Activision gets brought up, EA, Ubisoft gets brought into this one, but I'm saying strictly with like American companies with American patents, EA, Activision. Unfortunately, Blizzard falls into that umbrella, but I'm still going to be the guy to say that if this algorithm was put in place, I think Blizzard still has enough clout in that business relationship they would actually refuse it. Because, look, people are going to call me a fanboy for this, and I understand it. But Blizzard has the reputation that they do because they care about the average little guy. They care about the gamer who's just stepping in there and wants to have a good experience. That's the gamer they want to support. They try very hard to get rid of toxic communities that games like COD and Battlefield and League of Legends have. They try very consistently to get rid of these toxic communities. I mean, for crying out loud, there's been a majority of Overwatch stories this year that have never made the agenda, with them trying to remove the toxic culture that's come into Overwatch recently. So I would at least like to say, I don't think I could put Blizzard into that bandwagon. I think Blizzard would fight on that matter. I don't know if they'd succeed, but I think they would fight tooth and nail to make sure that algorithm never made it into their games. At least fight to the bitter end. And then if they lost, then they lost, and they'd probably even come out and say, yeah, we had to implement it. But I agree with you there, though. It seems like something, EA or basically any pro microtransaction company would do. Romney, you've been kind of moving your head here back and forth and everywhere. Where are you at with this?
Well, looking at it, there's another side of this algorithm that we've neglected to mention, because we've mentioned the scenario in which a player is paired with a more advanced player that has a particular item to encourage microtransactions leading to that item. Another part of it, which again is equally as manipulative and feeds into the Skinner box cycle, is the concept of, if a player buys said item, they would then get matched with players in which they're more likely to have a more successful match with said item, thus encouraging them to buy more. Mm-hmm. And so that's another part of the algorithm here that we've neglected to mention, but that's kind of another side of that same coin of the goal being to encourage microtransactions, either by pairing players who don't buy in to those that have bought in to show what the items can do in game, and then pairing players who have bought the items with players that haven't, so they can see their items in action and thus are more likely to buy more. It is a very manipulative thing. It's not something I could see them trying to implement for a long period of time without enough players really getting wise. And like you mentioned, we do have to take the statement that Activision released stating that this was an exploratory patent, meaning that they were patenting this idea before trying to work it into a game to see if it could work. For all we know, they maybe tried implementing it and it didn't work, or they're holding off, considering that the patent was filed 2015.
Yeah.
And so,
I know a bunch of people are going to scream at us going, you can't take Activision at their word. You can't take EA at their word. Okay, and guys, I tend to agree with you on that. But if somebody's going to be playing this properly, then I'm going to be the guy. And the guy who's going to play it properly would take their statement at face value. And then 5 years down the road, when we can prove that they actually did implement this, throw that in their face. Kind of thing.
Yes. Because looking at it, although it's an interesting idea from a business standpoint, it sounds like it would be something that would be very difficult to maintain, very easy to abuse and even counteract. And so when you consider the large amount of player bases for games like Overwatch or Call of Duty or Heroes of the Storm, that's literally millions of people you're having to try to implement this algorithm to filter out. And that, it sounds like it's something that may work in a smaller pool, but not very sustainable. Now, granted, this is based on my limited knowledge of programming and how servers work, but looking at this is something that I can see them maybe implementing during an event of a larger game, but not in a game from the outset. So for Heroes of the Storm, or like to use League of Legends, for example, with the loot boxes they release, it's kind of one of those cases, okay, I can see them trying to implement this during an event to try to incentivize buying these loot boxes, but this isn't something that I can see someone trying to implement in a game from the outset because, well, we're a lot savvier consumers now. We would smell that crap right away.
Exactly. And frankly, here's the thing. I think there are enough gamers out there that are pissed off about the microtransactions in existing games that I know a lot of people will say that microtransactions are a sustainable formula. And to some extent, there is logic saying that they are. But I think there are enough people getting savvy every day that it's not going to be something that lasts for a decade. It's definitely going to be something that's going to get ousted. I'm not saying in the next few years, but probably in the next 5. They're going to get enough savvy people that microtransactions will not work. People will get pissed off at them, and they will start supporting the games that don't give them microtransactions, especially shoving them down their throat. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of address,
I'm going to give gamers the benefit of the doubt here. I think you guys will ultimately fix this problem.
Well, and to kind of address the petition that I feel kind of got dovetailed into this, even though it's still very much a separate issue of whether it would be classified as gambling. The way the person who wrote this petition phrased it in regards to the ESRB's official statement, in which the ESRB stated that while there's an element of chance in these mechanics, the player is always guaranteed to receive in-game content, even if the player receives something that they don't want. That statement, I feel, holds fair water, because they try bringing up examples of, oh, if you do this but get compensated with credit, it's not real gambling. But that's kind of the point here, is that even if you're paying for a loot box that's a mystery item, even if you don't get what you want, you are still getting content. And that is the real distinction here. Whereas with gambling, there is that risk of loss, the risk of not getting anything in return. And honestly, the way the guy phrased it, trying to refute it, is not written very well, where he's trying to be like, oh, but if you get compensated with credit, it's considered real gambling. Yeah, that's exactly what they're saying. You're not pointing out any flaws in their argument. If you play a slot machine and you lose, but you're compensated with credit, or with a prize, like a toy that pops out, then yeah, you still got something out of that transaction. You were still rewarded, even if it's something that even if it's a result you didn't want. And that's the big distinction here. And I understand the annoyance and the sneakiness employed to get people to pay real money for these, but that's the real distinction here in regards to whether loot boxes would be considered gambling. And it's that you're paying money for a product. It's all that's different is that you're not sure what product you're going to get, but at the end of the day, you're still getting a product.
Yep. And so I guess to kind of wrap up because literally we got to wrap things up because we got a bunch of other things to talk about. But to wrap this up, a lot of people still wanted to know our thoughts of like, how would you fix this system? If you don't agree with the petition, if you don't agree with this, that, or the other, how would you fix this system? Or what they're talking about specifically is microtransactions. How would you fix this so that microtransactions can start getting out of our games? And unfortunately, guys, my answer is still the same as it was when I answered 2 weeks ago, as I answered 1 month ago, as I answered 2 years ago. Vote with your dollar.
Mm-hmm.
The dollar is the only thing that matters in this whole thing. The reason why these microtransaction systems are still in play is because people are using them.
Mm-hmm.
But for as many people as are actually using these systems, that number dwindles. Okay? Because eventually people get sick and tired of being screwed out of their money, especially since they already paid $60 for this game, or in some cases upwards of 120 to be able to do this. That number gets smaller and smaller. So at that point, continue to vote with your dollar and don't support these things. If you don't like microtransaction systems, I can think of no bigger message you could send to Activision or to EA than to not buy their game at the first month of launch, wait a couple of months, and then buy it. Because then at that point, the window's gone. And then on top of that, never buy into the microtransaction systems.
Yep.
If you did that and they saw that they lost sales for implementing microtransaction systems, guess what? They're going to stop doing them.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same case with free-to-play games as well, with things like Fire Emblem Heroes or Super Mario Run. I mean, I used to be a big Mabinogi player back in high school as well, so I remember buying those Nexon cards. And it's the same case where with free-to-play games, if you don't like the idea of microtransactions, well, don't waste your time playing those free-to-play games. Don't give them the attention. I mean, yeah, I still play Fire Emblem Heroes once in a blue moon, but I've not put any money down on any of those microtransactions because I don't let the game have that much of priority over my life. And that's the other key thing here is that if you are the kind of person who likes to play free-to-play games, well, if you don't like the microtransactions, you can either simply not play them or exercise some restraint and not purchase them if you really still want to play those games. Yes, it kind of sucks you get nerfed a little bit, but, well, that raises the question of, is the game fun on its own to warrant you playing it without the microtransactions? And if the answer is no, play a different game. It's as simple as that. If you're not having fun, don't waste your time with it.
It's exactly that. I mean, the perfect example that I can give in my life is when I've played microtransaction systems, it's actually been on Blizzard games. And the only time when I've actually bought into the microtransactions, I'm going to use this example. Heroes of the Storm is one of my favorite games to be able to play when I actually have time. And one of the reasons I like playing it is because of the various amounts of characters that you can get from that game, like various amounts of Blizzard characters from 4 to 5 different universes. But a lot of the characters that you can get, you have either an option to buy for real money currency or to buy for in-game gold. I tend to utilize the in-game gold a lot of the time for those. And when it's just real-life money, man, I have to want that character. So like where Heroes of the Storm has a roster, I don't even know like where its roster is actually standing. I'm probably at about a quarter of that. And it's simply because I'm not buying characters I don't care about. And I'm not going to give Blizzard $15 if I don't care about the character. So then at that point, they don't win my money in the microtransactions game long run. When they give me stuff that I actually want to pay for microtransactions only that way, yeah, I do pay into it, but a majority of the time, I'm not paying. I vote with my dollar and I say, no, I'm not interested. That's how you win that game, people. You come in and you use the actual game currency, or you don't buy the game at all. That I can think of no clear. I mean, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. I can think of no clearer message you could send to EA, to Activision, to Nintendo, to Konami, to anybody. Well, not Konami. Konami won't listen to you, but Capcom, any of those guys, if you don't buy their game.
Pretty much. It's
Vote
you
with
let
your
your dollar spin. Yep.
Pretty much. Final thoughts on this, Alex, because we kind of wrapped up with you.
Well, that's it. Pretty much. Just vote with your dollar. Don't buy microtransactions.
Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into the next story tonight, which by listeners' request, we actually wanted to talk about. Specifically, people wanted to know Romney's opinion because, well, he's an actual subscriber to Humble Bundle, and they had a major announcement a couple of weeks ago that IGN has officially acquired Humble Bundle. We've since had updates to the story that we actually have for it. So a representative for Humble Bundle has provided, this is a Polygon article with the following statement. So let's see, where is the official statement? Editorial integrity is something we take very seriously at IGN, and I am confident that we will strike the right balance when it comes to our coverage of Humble Bundle and the games they sell. Our readers and customers have always come first, and that won't change. So basically, yeah, IGN has acquired Humble Bundle. I am actually kind of surprised on the internet reaction to it because it hasn't been as negative as I thought it should have been. But I think the best place to start here would, because I can already see Romney kind of thinking here. Maybe we'll start with you and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, honestly, when I heard this news, now keep in mind, I'm not as familiar with the reputation of IGN as much as other people, since I'm not actively like in those gaming news circles. I mean, I've heard a lot of the rumors about the various ways reviews can be colored, but when pressures are exerted by various powers that be. But honestly, I'm kind of indifferent to this news because I can't really see how IGN could directly affect Humble Bundle's operations, since IGN doesn't really have any other stores or anything that they promote. They don't develop games, so it's basically the equivalent of a news company buying a place that happens to sell video games and happens to partner with charities. So honestly, I'm not really sure what is going to change, if anything. I will like to clarify, I'm not actually a subscriber to Humble Monthly, which is their monthly service, but I've purchased a number of games through Humble Bundle in the past, so I
You
am
even
familiar.
offered them to panelists on the podcast.
Yep, numerous times before they stopped letting people do that because I guess they got tired of the codes being handed around, and so now they just give you the one code that redeems everything all at once, which sucks. But basically, I don't really see how things could change, given that between the two, Humble Bundle is kind of the more successful of the two, and that's probably the reason IGN acquired them, is to obtain that source of revenue. But other than that, I don't really see what could really change. And keep in mind, I don't know much about what IGN does behind their various closed doors, but as things stand now, from what I understand, I don't really see that much changing. I mean, good for Humble Bundle. It means that we have a larger company that is providing revenue to allow them to keep going, and thereby also raise money for other charities, which is kind of the main draw of Humble Bundle. But as for my reaction, I'm kind of indifferent. I'm not really sure what's going to change, if anything.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that, well, you kind of clarified on as best as you can. I was actually going to read an official statement on the matter, but I think we've pretty much covered it. IGN has acquired Humble Bundle. And the funniest part that I've actually found with this is some of the reaction. I'm not kidding, guys. I wish I could have been able to Photoshop this to put it in here. I actually saw somebody say the only reason that they purchased Humble Bundle was to make it look so that they weren't as evil as they are. Well, you're right. I'm not saying that your statement is right, but well, if IGN is actually evil, then purchasing a charitable organization would make them look less evil. I can't necessarily say I disagree with you on the matter. Let me actually go ahead and go into the official quote that we have in the article. We chose IGN because they really understand our vision, share our passions for our games, and believe in our mission to promote awesome digital content while helping charity. This is from Jeffrey Rosen, who is CEO and co-founder of Humble Bundle. I can't think of a better partner than IGN to help Humble Bundle continue our quest. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Romney. Like I've heard the stuff of people saying like IGN is part of the just as much a part of the problem as they are trying to be the solution. But I've never been able to confirm any of it. I mean, I've actually seen them give better reviews to games that probably shouldn't have gotten it, and I've seen them give bad reviews to games that to companies that probably paid through the nose to not have that. IGN's one of those few companies that still kind of does that. I'm not saying they do it all the time, but they've got at least some kind of a ratio. So I can't necessarily say this is a bad idea. At least not until we get further down the road.
Yep, especially when you consider some of the games that get released through Humble Bundles, usually games that didn't do that well for one reason or another at launch, tend to kind of get a bit of a second life. I mean, for example, games that I never would have played if I bought them on my own would have been stuff like Thomas Was Alone, Gone Home. Whoa Dave is another good example of a game that I probably would never have touched. I mean, Legend of K, I would not have, and I kind of still probably wouldn't buy Legend of K if it wasn't given to me as part of a bundle for the PS4, but that may be something that IGN may be hoping to leverage. If they do want to go the route of taking bribes for positive reviews, that may be something they may try to leverage of, oh, well, maybe if you add this game to a bundle on Humble Bundle, maybe we can give this other game you're publishing a more favorable review, which, yes, that's incredibly sneaky, but but as you're explaining that, that's the only other bargaining chip that I can see IGN trying to pull.
And according to statements literally later in this article, it's been confirmed that Humble Bundle will continue to operate independently in the wake of the acquisition, but they will receive some support from IGN. Okay. So then at that point, I mean, again, we have to take those statements at face value right here. If that's the case, then great. IGN's just kind of there to help support it. If we come down the line 3 years from now and all of a sudden find out, no, they were just used, then okay, fine. We've got an argument, but it doesn't really look like that's the case right now. This actually might be for the better for both companies. And in the meantime, I'm going to treat it as such. I think as long as Humble Bundle can operate independently, they'll be fine. Alex, what's your take on the IGN Humble Bundle situation?
Well, I don't subscribe to Humble Bundle either. I just want to hope this is a website just finding more avenues to get their media across and just
Yeah,
invest in other ventures and venues. So let's just hope it is positive and there's nothing truly nefarious behind it. I mean,
because
that does happen from time to time.
it does, and at this point, really, all we can do is hope. Until we actually have the evidence saying, "Oh, IGN is actually evil," we can't really say that they're evil in this regard. So let's go ahead and move into the next story that we have tonight. This is another thing I never thought I'd see, especially after, a bunch of stores got shut down and it wasn't going to work. But apparently GameStop is looking to offer a new subscription service for customers, basically allowing them to rent used games. Not new. So I have to clarify this because some people actually reached out and said no new games too. Everything I've read said it's used games only. Okay. So GameStop will allow you to go into a subscription-based service that will allow you to rent used games. And I think it's going to be like GameFly to an extent where they're going to strongly incentivize you to buy the used game. But it's up to you. You can take it back. You can try something else out. So this will be available starting November 19th and can be purchased as a gift if you wanted to be able to do that. And the cost is $60. So guests can choose from any pre-owned video game in their catalog, from the throwback classics to the latest hits. And I don't believe that there's actually a restriction on like how many days you can hold on to it. As long as you have the subscription, you can hold on to it. And if you decide to buy the game, all you got to do is pay for it. And there you go. You can go ahead and rent another one.
Yeah, actually, like looking at it, it even goes further. So it looks like you can rent an unlimited amount. You're allowed to have one free used game at the end of the 6-month period. So if you wanted to only have the one you like at the end of the 6-month period, you can keep it. But if you want to say buy one, but then could keep another one, that seems to be the other part of it here. Seems to be how this works, is that you can rent an amount, you can swap them out as much as you like, but only for 6 months.
Yeah. So at that point, that's probably going to be awesome for a lot of people. By the way, the service is called Power Pass. This is what they're going to be calling it for this system. So really all we can do is get into our opinions on the matter because this is happening whether we like it or not. And I'm just going to start up. So we've started up with Rami a couple of times. Alex, good thing or a bad thing for GameStop right now?
Well, I think it would be a good thing, but I think the one problem is it's going to require you to, looks like it's going to require you to also be part of their power-up program. So that's two programs stacked onto each other. You got the $60 program. That's obviously a subscription program, and you're going to have to constantly pay into that. And you got to be the power-up rewards member. So frankly,
the Power Up Rewards there's technically a free tier there. And then after you have Power Up, then you can, for $60, get Power Pass, and that would allow you to rent.
Right. So, okay. So clarify for this to me. Are they going to essentially be holding two accounts, or is this basically like going platinum, basically? Like you're upgrading one service account?
I would think the membership would upgrade.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like here. Because I'm a member of their Power Up Pro program. At least that's what they're calling it now until this new program comes into place. And yeah, I'm guessing that's probably the best way to compare it, is that you have the free membership tier, and then you pay the $60, and you're basically upgraded to the tier that allows you to rent games for 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the way that this would look is, this is a horrible example because it's GameStop and not like a credit card company, but this would be like the highest tier of membership that they have for you. That means you get the gold star treatment whenever you're in GameStop. And part of that is just because you can go and rent games from there.
Okay. So, well, that being said, I was going to say maybe this wouldn't be so good, but it is an interesting idea for GameStop because their GameStop has been struggling up lately, to possibly keep them up. I don't know how well this will compete against GameFly. I don't know. Is GameFly that much of a presence anymore? because it doesn't seem to get brought up a lot as far as game rental.
It is, but only in the aspect that it's pretty much the only ones out there. I mean, you could technically make the argument for Redbox, but Redbox, I almost don't want to consider them in the same league, because Redbox lets you keep it for, I think it's a day for movies and it's 3 days for games, is how they do it. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Sort of. How they do it is that if they charge you by the day, basically, and if it goes beyond a certain point, they assume that you're keeping it, and then they charge you the full cost. So for movies, specifically DVDs, they charge you $1 a day. For games and Blu-ray, I think for Blu-ray they charge you $1.50 a day. For games, it's $2.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is that if more after 25 days or so, give or take, I know it's not that high for games, but it's like after a certain amount of time, they assume that you're keeping it and they charge you the full amount.
So at that point, Redbox kind of runs off of like a daily subscription-esque model, and Gamefly runs off of a monthly subscription model. And that's what fuels their overall library and all that stuff. So I don't know if you can necessarily consider them in the same market. That's why I'm saying Gamefly, I think, has that market, and the fact that they are the only one that does.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what GameStop can really bring to the table with this. I could see it bringing in a lot of customers, even though the price is a bit high, but I think the hardcore would certainly pay for it.
Yeah, the only thing that I see as a drawback to it, and I haven't been able to get enough answers to this, is that does this pertain to, and I think this article doesn't even mention this. I think it's, here we go. So they actually do say if the game is not available in that store, we have a web in-store system that allows customers to select the game and then ship it to that store for them to pick it up. So you can technically be able to get, if they don't have it, then they'll communicate with their in-store system and you'll be able to pick it up. The only downside that I see with that is kind of the same downside I see with Gamefly. I know that GameStop is restricting this to just used games, but what if you want that super, super rare game that is just not that easily available, and there's only like, let's just say for the sake of argument, like 10 in the system. Well, then at that point, when all 10 are used up, then you're basically stuck again. And I would actually say Gamefly has this problem with new games where there's massive, like, I haven't used GameStop in a while, but I remember when I was just barely starting reviews, I had to eventually go to a pay model because I would never get the games on time. There was always a queue. It didn't matter when you pre-ordered it on Gamefly. There was always a queue for the new games, and so you'd have to wait anyway. So at that point, I see that as being a problem, but maybe it was a good idea, and this will help with the issue that it's just with used games. They're not including new games into the mix. Romney, where are you standing with it? Is this a system you actually want to try?
I'll be honest, I actually kind of like this idea, especially considering that if there's like games that you hear about that you can find used that are kind of niche, or just you want to try a certain type of game that keeps getting recommended to you ad nauseum, instead of dropping a whole bunch of money, if you just want to, I probably would be curious about paying into the system so that way I can try certain games that keep getting recommended to me ad nauseum, but without having to plunk down of large amounts of money to get said games. I mean, people have recommended me the Souls series who knows how many times. I have my own reasons for not getting into those games, but that would be a way I would say, like, okay, people keep recommending Bloodborne. All right, I have this rental system. I'll rent Bloodborne to see if I like it, and if I don't like it, I'll just take it back without having to pay anything extra. And so I kind of like this idea, especially since the way they used to initially encourage is that you would buy games at GameStop, play them, beat them, and then sell them back. Whereas here it's a case of, yeah, you're just renting them. It cuts out that whole process of having to buy it, then selling it back for like less than 1% of what you initially paid for it. Whereas here, it kind of cuts through that process a little bit. So I'm curious about trying the program out. I mean, $60 is still a lot of money, but that's about the price of a used game for the current generation. So for like 6 months of rentals, I actually kind of like the idea. I mean, I do have some misgivings because, well, the kind of games that tend to be returned and are cycled through GameStops constantly in the value used pile give me pause because they're not always the greatest that are available.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of the system, and if I wasn't as leery of GameStop, I probably would try it out.
Exactly. I don't know. I'm to a point where I probably wouldn't try this system right off the bat. I'd probably wait on, well, like Romney to try out the system and then either recommend it to me or tell me it's absolute crap. That's kind of where I'm sitting with the system. You make a good point, you make a good point, Romney, where if you're like the average gamer, like the niche gamer, you're $60 is probably not that much to you because you're probably not buying that many games in a year. I would say like we're not the perfect examples here because I buy games for reviews so that I can at least say, is this worth the $60? And therefore, I'm kind of an active buyer. This is not necessarily going to help or hurt me. In fact, this probably just would be an added thing for me to be able to go use.
Yeah. Whereas someone like me who doesn't buy that many games that often, this actually makes a little bit more sense because that's why I don't do a lot of game reviews on my channels because, well, I kind of like keeping games fun, and so that's not my beat. And so for someone like me who maybe takes some time to play some games once in a while but not very often, this would be an okay system to try.
Exactly. So at that point, it sounds like it would be more of a benefit to you than it necessarily would be to me. But at that point, I would still I'd wait for your opinion and then see whether or not I want to try this out. What about you, Alex? Is this something you would want to try right off the bat, or would you want to wait to hear what people say about it?
Yeah, I'd want to wait, mostly because it's the $60 price tag, and that has me. Down the line, that might become less of an issue, but like, say, right now for me, that's just a bit too steep for my pocketbook right now.
But it might actually, I'm just going to throw this out there, it might actually be worthwhile if it turns out to be a successful thing because you're looking to get a PS4 in the next little bit. And so at that point, you don't necessarily need to buy like new games right off the bat. You already have a library that goes back at least a couple of years that you can go look into. And that's perfectly fine.
Right.
So to those who are actually going to look into this, that's who I think this actually benefits. For me, who actually goes off and does reviews on a regular basis, not really. So good luck with it. And actually leave us a comment below if you actually want to try out the system on November 19th and tell us what you think. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on the matter. So moving on into the last story. Well, it's a story, but also kind of a discussion. Mainly because this is something that's been coming up, I want to say longer than about 3 months at this point. It's just recent events that have actually brought it to light a little bit more. People might remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about EA shutting down Visceral Games. Okay, and while that was sad, especially for Dead Space fans and for Star Wars fans, a few devs within the industry have shared a little bit more light, at least into their perspective on the matter. In particular, the article that we actually have is an interview with Manveer Hare. I think is how you actually say his name. If I'm mangling that name, you guys will let me know. But he's a former Mass Effect dev. I think at one point he worked on, let's see, was it just Mass Effect? That's the only one that they actually mentioned in the story. He's a Mass Effect dev, and he was asked specifically about these particular issues, including with Visceral Games, and shed this light on the matter. So this is the quote. I'm just going to go ahead and read it verbatim, and you guys can take it however you want to take it, and then we'll get into the discussion. This is in regards to the Visceral Games shutdown. This is definitely a thing inside of EA. They are generally pushing for more open world games, and the reason is you can monetize them better. So open world multiplayer games is what he's specifically aiming at. The words EA use are have them come back again and again. Why do you care about that, EA? The reason you care about that is because of microtransactions. We have another connection to microtransactions. It just won't leave us alone. People buying card packs for the Mass Effect games and multiplayer, etc. That's the same reason why we added multiplayer to Mass Effect 3, right? To get people to keep coming back to a thing to just play for 60 to 100 hours. Then we actually go on to have a few more quotes. So we have the problem is that we've scaled up our budgets to $100 million plus, and this is talking about a game budget for a AAA game. And we haven't actually made a space for linear single-player games that are under that. But why can't we have both? Why does it have to be one or the other? The reason is that EA is and those big publishers generally only care about the highest return on the investment. They don't actually care about what the players want. They care about what the players will pay for. Those are subtly different things. And what this is actually addressing is what a lot of devs have been basically saying, that AAA, specifically US AAA companies, are moving more towards a multiplayer open world transactionable model with their games. So in a lot of cases where we have, for example, Mass Effect 3 shoehorning in multiplayer by EA's request, is simply so that we can do things like this to encourage people to do multiplayer, to come back that 60 to 100 hours to work on this stuff. And then when we see companies like, I think their name is Machine Games, the ones that just barely put out Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and it's strictly a single player model, you're actually starting to see some AAA game companies frowning on that because there's not that much of a return investment, especially with these big budgets. Because here's the thing, guys, $100 million, that's kind of bare minimum for the games right now. For AAA games right now, that's minimum. Bare minimum on what is being spent to get these things out there. So, I mean, you can understand if that's how much money that EA and Activision and a few other companies are putting into these investments. Yeah, they want to see a serious return on that. But is that the right way to go? And I actually do like that this guy makes the argument of, if we had more single player experiences to kind of divvy up the market that were cheaper to make, maybe that would be able to offshoot all of these humongo projects that have to be $100 million, that have to have microtransactions in them, maybe even have to have that Activision algorithm in there to be able to make them more marketable. So the discussion here is simply, do we actually agree with this? Do we actually think that, yeah, AAA is moving more towards the multiplayer open world, dare I say, MMO-esque experience because of these models? Or do we think that this is still kind of a pipe dream? Do we think that this is actually going to change in the next few years when companies don't see it as marketable, kind of thing? If that makes sense. I think I've got Romney a little confused, but
yeah, just looking at this, it pretty much is what businesses have done for years, where it's a case of they are looking at trends and they're trying to jump on a trend that they think is going to make them more money in the long run. And it's not helped by the fact that games are getting more and more expensive to produce, with budgets that are rivaling those of blockbuster movies now. So naturally, they are going to try to do what they can to make sure they get a much larger, longer-term return on it. Because on the one hand, you'd have stuff like Metal Gear Solid, which is a single-player experience that has a Hollywood-style budget, and they're hoping more people will buy the game new, since that's where most of the money would come in. Mm-hmm. Whereas nowadays, you have it where people are buying games used. I mean, a good example, you'll notice how Nintendo has been trying to incentivize digital downloads of their games instead of doing the registration system when you would buy it in store. And so you have a case where with used games, if you have the things that have the microtransactions in place, even if a player buys it used, there's still a chance that they're still going to be spending more money on a game, and thus adding to the amount of money that you make as a return on that investment. Yeah. And so, as much as it sucks, that seems to be the trend, and it's something that the gaming industry has done to itself. Because back in the day, it became the powerhouse force that it is. It was relatively easy to hype players up to buying a game. Even if the game was crap, it was a lot easier to control how much hype was built for a game to get people to buy it out of the gate. That's why the holiday season is still so important. But nowadays, where you have reviews going up within days of the games being released, it's a lot harder to try to get enough people buying it at launch. That trying for these open world experiences seems to make more feasible sense financially.
Yeah, but the one thing that I actually want to bring up here is that most stories that I've actually seen covering this tend to lump every AAA game company, US company in there. I'm not even going to include the Japanese companies because then or the Japanese or the European companies because that gets bigger. Let's just say US. And even then, I don't think it's every single one of them because here's the thing. Bethesda Softworks, by majority, a lot of their games are single player driven experiences. Okay, so you can't say that it's every single US AAA company. Bethesda's considered AAA. They have Fallout, they have Skyrim, they have Prey, they have a number of games under their belt, including the new Wolfenstein, that are single player only. And they're only driven by that. So already you can't say that that model works. I think the only multiplayer games that Bethesda has under their umbrella are Doom and Quake. Because I think the Quake Heroes or Quake Arena came out. And so at that point you have those two, but that's it.
But that and ESO.
Which one? What?
ESO, Elder Scrolls Online.
Elder Scrolls Online. I forgot about that one. So that's a multiplayer experience, so that would work.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to the same.
Also, the card game, the Elder Scrolls card game, that would work too.
Yes, and that kind of goes into the same case where you have companies like EA that are trying to jump on every single trend, but then you have companies like Bethesda that know their strengths and try to play into those strengths. And so, again, it's the same thing you see with movies where after Disney was able to get the Marvel Cinematic Universe off the ground and working, you then had Warner Brothers trying to copy it. You then had Universal trying to copy it. You had so many other studios trying to recreate that same thing without actually laying down the groundwork, and that's how you end up with bad Mummy reboots or disastrous Superman sequels that blow the load on one of the entire history of the character. But it's the same basic thing. EA and Activision tend to be the kind that are trying to chase trends rather than playing to their strengths, which is where you get companies like Blizzard and Bethesda, where Blizzard knows what it does well and just continues doing what it does well. Bethesda knows what it does well. Even if the games aren't fully patched, they know that, hey, we have the diehard fan base that want these open world experiences with these worlds to explore, basically create the experience that they know how to create, and that's what keeps them in business.
Yeah, but I'm also going to bring this up too, because contradictory to what we actually have in our live chat tonight, by the way, welcome chat. Thank you so much for coming. Blizzard got wrapped in there, basically with the example of pay to win games like Hearthstone. Okay. Here's why I don't consider Blizzard part of that either, is because unlike EA, Activision, who this model is working for them and they want to continue to pursue it, Blizzard is still open-minded about being able to create an awesome single-player experience. Okay, so at that point, I'm not going to lump Blizzard in there. If you want to lump Blizzard in there, you're more than welcome to. But I don't agree with that because, yes, you do have Hearthstone, which is a multiplayer game, especially in a player versus player model. Heroes of the Storm is that too. Overwatch is that as well. I'm not saying that you're wrong. But then you have Diablo. Diablo, the only franchise within Blizzard right now that doesn't have an esport behind it. Okay? That's a single player experience with multiplayer facets. Okay? World of Warcraft, even though it is an MMO, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you in this regard because Legion is probably the most recent expansion, is probably one of the most single player driven expansions in the entire lifespan of World of Warcraft. There's so much crap that you can do individually in that expansion that grouping is almost unnecessary. So I don't necessarily say that they are part of the multiplayer viewpoint because they still are making single player driven experiences. In fact, Hearthstone today just barely announced single player driven experiences within the game. They actually announced an ability called Dungeon Runs, which is basically playing Hearthstone single player. So at that point, you still have the single player experiences. I would probably lump Blizzard more with Bethesda in this regard. They're still creating single player experiences. And on top of that, they're also finding cheaper ways to do it so that at that point, a lot of their money can go towards the esports programs kind of thing. So at that point, yeah, I completely agree that yes, the AAA industry is mainly moving towards a multiplayer open world model. I mean, for crying out loud, how many times have you guys actually seen Anthem being compared to Destiny now? So basically Destiny, so Destiny is Activision's Destiny, and Anthem is EA's Destiny. It's fairly safe to say that we can actually make that comparison because they're both going to run on the same models. And so, yeah, I think those big two are really running towards that. I just don't know necessarily if I could say the rest of the US AAA gaming companies are. And just to get off of my soapbox here really quick, Alex, what do you think? Do you think the US AAA gaming market is moving more towards these open world MMO-esque experiences, or is there just not enough proof for you yet?
I'd say there are pretty damning signs that we are moving more towards that. As games continue to get more expensive and these companies continue to look more on recouping their costs, and as Sony and Microsoft continue really pushing how much hardware they can cram into their little boxes, and as PC technology continues to get more and more improved, yeah, I'd say we're starting to see a pretty overwhelming majority, maybe not entirely the entire market, but we're starting to see a pretty significant chunk of that market with your big companies like EA or Activision really pushing these open world models and these pay to win models and these microtransactions. And I think the editorial makes kind of a point that in the process that we're very much narrowing the market. That's almost what it feels like. It's either you're the giant high-end AAA, you're this giant high-end AAA game, or you're indie. And it's like, I'm wondering how much more the chasm is going to widen before it's just sort of like, okay, either we have the very expensive AAA game, and we just have the very niche digital only indie games, where it's starting to feel like there's nothing in between left.
Yeah, but I think also Romney has it kind of right, is that when you have video games that have these kinds of budgets, you, like with Hollywood, you kind of walk yourself into a corner. Because I mean, here we have EA and Activision. What are their most successful franchises that are being worked on right now? Call of Duty, Battlefield, Destiny,
FIFA.
I wanted to bring up the Destiny clone, basically.
Oh, right. Okay.
Even though I don't know if I want to call it that yet. I want to actually play it. But you have these games. So at that point, you have open world shooter kind of things. We've all agreed that the film industry is kind of stuck in a rut because they're more interested in retooling books and superhero stuff than they are in anything else. So at that point, with so much budget being put into these films, you have to go with what is going to be a guaranteed return on your investment. And so the gaming world is now starting to go into that. And we've already said how much of a bad idea it is for the film industry to go into it. I honestly think this is going to blow up in their faces at some point because people are going to get tired of this stuff eventually. I mean, am I wrong, Alex?
No, I think you're right, because we're seeing that in the film industry right now this year, and especially with this abysmal box office summer season, right? We're seeing such really poor returns in a lot of these films, and we're seeing a lot of these stillborn franchise attempts. So yeah, I have to agree. I think at some point the gaming industry probably will hit this wall, and it's going to come crashing down.
And then at that point, I really do think, honestly, it's going to be the single player driven experiences that are going to bring us back. Because I mean, here's the thing: there are guilty parties within the reason I kept it to US only is simply because the market then gets too big. But guys, there are Japanese companies that are doing this. Sadly, I think Konami, after moving into their microtransactions model, they have been very profitable. As much as we hate to admit that, guys, they have been very profitable. So at that point, I mean, it works. But eventually a wall can be hit. I'm hoping that wall happens sooner rather than later, because look, I enjoy multiplayer games as much as the next guy. I tend to stick solely with like Blizzard games. I think their communities are better, but single player games are what drove me to gaming in the first place. I just can't imagine playing an MMO Zelda. I think if Zelda went MMO, that'd probably be the Zelda game I don't play. Because I do like the single player driven experiences, and I like the companies that still provide that to me. And I'm more willing to incentivize the companies that are going to take that risk than to the companies that are just looking to make a quick buck. Because again, voting with my dollar. That's not what I want. If the movie isn't what I like, I walk out of the theater. Kind of thing. Final thoughts on this before we move into the next story, because I know I've talked a lot of people's ears off.
Well, there's not much else to really say. It's something we've seen in the games industry before, where when World of Warcraft came out, everyone tried rushing out an MMO. And then when Halo came out, everybody was trying to create a Halo killer. That's how we got stuff like Killzone and Haze. It's just gaming companies seeing trends and trying to capitalize on them, but then it'll get to the point where everybody's trying to capitalize on them and people get sick of it. We saw it in the 90s with the prevalence of platformers and fighting games. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it now with a bunch of, it's history repeating itself with any industry. People notice trends, they try to make money off the trends without understanding why the trends became trends, and thus they fall on their faces.
I find it painful now in my head, because you brought up the 90s and the fact that platformer clones would come out, and one of them literally this week got rebooted.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd
but
see
yeah, it goes to
happen.
Well, yeah, but it leads to the same example, because we had Mario and Sonic, but then you had a bunch of other mascot characters come out of the woodwork. I mean, yeah, we had good ones like Crash Bandicoot, but then you also had the really bad ones or obscure ones like Arrow the Acrobat, Bubsy, and a few others like Croc that never really took off. And it's the same thing. The industry sees a trend, tries to copy and replicate said trend, and then gets shocked when that doesn't work. It's the same. Yeah. I mean, again, mascot platformers, fighting games, because we've seen so many. I mean, look at all the Mortal Kombat knockoffs that we got back when the initial game came out with the digitized actors that even Capcom tried copying it. That's how bad it got.
Yeah, Capcom tried copying it and failed to an extent. So, yeah, it didn't work out. And on top of that, like, look at all of the other consoles that came out around that time that had to have a Mortal Kombat clone on it, and also had to have a Doom clone, and had to have a Wolfenstein clone, and all that stuff. So,
yep, especially when you look at the very beginning of the games industry prior to the crash, and kind of what led to the gaming crash was how so many consoles and so many games, so many the same as one another, flooded the market, and, well, people got fed up and stopped buying it, leading to the infamous crash of 1983.
Yep. All right, well, then let's go ahead and move into the first entertainment story that we have. And actually, I'm going to throw in a left hook, because we could go into this right away, but I think we're actually going to have enough time to cover a story that I wished would make the agenda, but I didn't think we were going to have enough time. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the link. And Alex, if you could redistribute that link to the chat, that'd be awesome. So give me a second here. There we go. I've always wanted to report on a story like this. And now I have an opportunity. So, because I missed my opportunity when dude married a DS and all that. But it is official. This actually happened about a week ago. And again, we weren't here to be able to do it. But Saudi Arabia has granted citizenship to a robot. You heard me right, everybody. So Saudi Arabia has just granted citizenship to Sophia, the Hanson Robotics robot. This is actually an IGN article, but comes from TechCrunch. Sophia is the latest creation of Dr. David Hanson, Hanson's robotics founder, and she was designed to look like Audrey Hepburn and focus on 3 human traits: creativity, empathy, and compassion. And she just barely earned citizenship in the nation of Saudi Arabia. Yep, guys, I think it's official. I think we are in the world of Isaac Asimov without the 3 laws of robotics. Those come later.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, like to a point. The thing is that with Asimov's stories, the point is exploring why those laws can't really work when you really think about it.
Yeah. So, wow. Some prominent figures in the world of science and technology, such as Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking, have expressed concerns with the development of AI platforms. And this wasn't lost on Sophia. So basically, let's prevent the rise of the machines. I mean, I'm not saying that Saudi Arabia is the wrong. I really am not. I'm just finding it very interesting that citizenship has now been gained to a robot. How very progressive of us.
Well, you got to keep in mind the country that's doing it. That's the key thing here, is because this is Saudi Arabia we're talking about. I mean, especially when you consider that it's a female robot that is not wearing an abaya or hijab. Very much a publicity stunt, more than anything else.
Yes. I mean, I like the idea that this happened, but yeah, that's kind of my worry on this matter. It's very much a PR stunt. It's probably even in conjunction with Hanson Robotics to help not mass produce Sophia, but maybe actually get another couple of working models out of it. It's just weird to actually officially say that yes, a country in the world today has granted citizenship to an artificial life form.
Yeah, and whether or not that citizenship actually...
Now we can officially say that Saudi Arabia is more open than Japan, because I know, after seeing this a couple of years, there is actually a movement in Japan and in Korea to take digital girls, like in Love Plus and whatever, and recognize them as human beings.
Yeah, but again... This is one Saudi Arabia we're talking about, which has it's a very oppressive regime for one. So who knows what the citizenship, what rights said citizenship entail for a robot that is also a woman under Saudi law. Is the citizenship a citizenship that recognizes Sophia as a woman, or just as some kind of animal or something? And is it something that could actually be held up in court? And looking at this, I just see this, and I mean, it's cool, but it's a publicity stunt more than anything else, really. This is just Saudi Arabia saying, hey, we're proud of these developers. We're going to show that we're progressive by granting citizenship to this robot. Nothing could possibly go wrong here, and it's probably not going to really move beyond just a weird sort of article that we happen to stumble upon.
Shall we take that citizenship degree as basically the equivalent of buying your own moon real estate? That's pretty much the best way to look at this.
Yep, it's like buying your own moon real estate with volcano insurance.
Exactly. Alex, what are your thoughts on Sophia earning citizenship with Saudi Arabia?
Even as a publicity stunt, I'm standing here all amazed because it's Saudi Arabia. I mean, maybe UAE, which I know is just as kind of conservative as Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure quite to the extent, but I can see this maybe United Arab Emirates, because they're still rolling in endless amounts of oil wealth there. But, or again, maybe like South Korea or maybe Japan, I could see this. But Saudi Arabia, of all places, Japan's even as a publicity stunt, this just baffles me.
In this regard, because it's robotics, right? Japan's the first company you think of, or the first country you think of, not Saudi Arabia of all places.
Or any Middle Eastern country, really. Just again, maybe United Arab Emirates, maybe, but just it's like, wow, how long did it take for women to finally be able to get the right to drive in Saudi Arabia, much less they grant a robot citizenship overnight like that? Even as a publicity stunt, it just baffles me.
I just got this quote. I believe you guys need to check your privilege. No, I believe that's the robot's line. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, that the best way to be able to look at it is, yeah, this is forward thinking, but it's probably not going to move any further than this, and it's simply for marketing. I mean, the article even goes later on to say, like, this robot has made appearances on Jimmy Fallon playing rock paper scissors, so there's not a whole lot to look into this. This is not Commander data we're dealing with, everybody. This is basic artificial life.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Elon Musk's tweet about it. It was in response to an excerpt from an interview that a reporter conducted where they interviewed Sophia, and the transcript of it is, well, kind of terrifying. But Elon Musk's reply says, "Just feed it the Godfather movies as input. What's the worst that could happen?"
I know. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, final thoughts before we move on from Sophia. Because I really don't think there's too much to go into there, and we have other more pressing matters to discuss in the entertainment portion of this evening.
I guess I'm going to say it before someone else says it. Sophia is Skynet.
Yeah, pretty much. And Skynet is Cyberdyne, is Weyland-Yutani, is, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, if people are looking forward to replicants, well, I guess we're on the right track, but the real question is, do we really want replicants? I don't think so. So
the next story that we actually have to talk about, and we've had stories on this, and we've had joke stories. We're gonna actually talk about it, because I mean, here's the funny thing. Alex put this up on our Geek News feed for stories, and then a listener, or we had the legit story, and then Alex found a joke story from The Onion, and I actually got a few listener requests of The Onion story. So that just goes to show that The Onion is still taken as a serious news organization. I'm just going to start with with what the CNN article starts with and let you guys kind of piece it all together. Alexa, is it a good idea to let strangers into my house? Well, Amazon thinks so, because they're actually going to start offering a service called Amazon Key starting November 8th. So you can do this in 5 days, people. And it's for Prime members. You basically buy a kit that includes an Amazon security camera, the Cloud Cam, and a compatible smart lock, which allows for, when your packages are due that day and you're off at work, for a UPS guy, or an Amazon guy, I guess is officially the term, to be able to open up the smart lock and leave packages in your house. So you thought it was creepy when the drones dropped off your packages. Now you can offer them an ability to get into your house. That's never going to be abused, is it?
Yeah. It's funny story.
Came. Oh wait, why don't I have any beer?
Yeah. Here's the thing. A friend of mine on Facebook raised actually a pretty good question that I'm sure is actually going to come up with people who opt into the service. Are insurance companies going to say, "Oh, you subscribe to the service. That means we're not going to cover anything that's stolen because you knew the risk of signing up for this service by allowing people to come into your home when you're not away." And that's the first concern that she had, that I have as well, is this going to be another loophole for insurance companies to not pay for stuff that's stolen?
Yeah, no. I think you're exactly right. I think it's exactly going to be a loophole to do just that. Or how about for people to just plain freeload?
Mm-hmm.
Because, look, it's great and all you're offering one security cam. Are you telling me that people aren't going to actually figure out the blind spots of that security cam and walk into your house and drink your beer and eat your cookies? It's going to happen, people. Look, as much as we would all like to acknowledge that we would eventually live in the Star Trek happy-go-lucky, we can trust everybody society, how realistic is that really?
Well, I have to assume, though, considering this is a service by Amazon, maybe they'd be tracking their employees to how long. I'm not saying there's no inherent risk. There definitely is. But, yes, to how long their employees might be loitering around a particular house. So
my problem
I'm
with
not
this
saying that this can't happen. I mean, like, all it takes is Amazon employee on the last day to pretty much do as he or she pleases and go raid around somebody's house. Frankly, I think the biggest issue right out the gate will be all the dozens of lost pets, because you've got to know some people don't necessarily keep their pets confined because they're generally well behaved enough to just loiter around the house on their own or so on.
Actually,
and
that
it's like,
brings
boom,
up
they open the door and
Alex, that
there
brings up
goes
another
the
argument.
dog.
How many times are you going to have an incident where your dog, who is defending your home, then assaults the Amazon guy and you get sued for that?
Yeah, this has got bad idea written all over it, really. I mean, just even if they completely don't work out the idea that potentially an Amazon employee is going to be wandering about your home and touching through your personal things, there's so much liability here, and it's like, how much liability is Amazon going to have to work through, especially with their own Amazon's own internal insurance agencies and workman's comp and everything, between pets and potential hazards and falls and drug houses and all the other hazards of urban life.
You have literally mentioned like 10 lawsuits that can just happen from somebody walking into your house.
I know, it's just, this is such a bad idea.
Do you want to know what makes this weirder? So this article actually relates to another one, and I'm going to bring that one up as part of the discussion here, because you think this is bad? Okay, this is a related story to the CNN article that we're actually getting this from. Walmart has a similar service either going into place or it is in place where they can deliver food and put it in your fridge.
Yeah, that's even a way worse idea.
I mean, if you thought you were at risk of losing your beer before, that just raised it by a good 30% at least.
Oh.
Jiminy Christmas. Okay, so I have to take a deep breath because that's what's going to... Here's my problem with this.
I guess we should let me say, I guess we should also mention that in theory, you'll be able to, of course, watch this all play out on your smart device. But, well, okay, what if you're in a work environment where you're absolutely prohibited from having your phone on your person, like certain call centers, like the one I was at just a year ago, absolutely could not have your phone on you. That's an instant terminable. That was an instant termination event. And there's a lot of other businesses, I'm sure, especially if there's a lot of confidentiality that they have to be worried about, where having your phone on you is an absolute no. So it's like, can you ideally say schedule a specific time, like on your lunch break, that you can have the Amazon guy show up? I'm not so sure about that. That's an answer I haven't gotten.
You can't plan for your plumber. You can't plan for the Amazon guy, kind of thing.
Because I
mean,
mean,
the issue there. And on top of that, like you brought up a legit point, because you work retail. So like this is kind of the... I'm sorry, Alex. I'm using this as a comparison. I'm not saying anything about you, but it's like bare minimum. And to my knowledge, they're starting to restrict phone use on the sales floor.
Yeah.
So like you were working a call center a couple of years ago, they restricted it because call center floor, but now you're actually having retail people restricting phone use on the sales floor. So how on earth are you going to be able to track this?
Yeah, it's just like you'll have to you'll just have to go off to some corner in the store where your managers aren't going to see you and watch on your phone. But it's only a matter of time before somebody else spots you, a customer or whatever, and complains.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a bad idea, really. And, I got to just say, easier solution for this Amazon, because I get the idea Amazon's going for. One, it's convenience. Two, it's to obviously cut down on package poachers, basically people who go steal packages from people's porches.
Here's the argument that can actually be brought up, which would be more safe for them to leave the package in your house or to have it sit on the porch all day. And you know what? There's a valid argument there.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, really, if you want to prevent this, the most ideal solution, Amazon, is, well, have have people still buy a similar product, but rather than people, giving access to your house, just let it be like a lockbox that you can place on your porch there.
Yeah. That would be a lot better.
Still,
I mean, that would be so much better to just have an Amazon lockbox that you could have there that only you have the key to, and well, they have the key to it too, but they can only leave, like their key only opens it like at one time, and then they can move on. Like, I'm sure a lot of us have kind of a mail system that runs off of that now, where if you have a package, you get a key, and it's a one-time use key, and then the mailman is the only one that can remove it, kind of thing. That would be a lot more safer system than letting the Amazon guy walk in. Because here's my eventual concern with this, and I promise we're going to get to Romney on this because we've stuck with Alex for the most part. This is a great system if it's just Amazon running it, because then at that point the scrutiny is on them. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, everybody wants this. Amazon does not have the supply and demand to be able to make that happen. So what do? They then source it out to other organizations that they have no control over, like the UPS guy, like the FedEx guy. And therefore, the FedEx guy can mess around in your house and nobody can bust him for it because Amazon is responsible, but it's not their company. So at that point, they'll go, well, we're technically within our liability shield. It wasn't us. Maybe you should have gotten it from us, kind of thing. So that's eventually where this becomes a problem. And again, guys, we do not live in the idealistic Star Trek Gene Roddenberry society.
Yeah.
Some people are just plain douche nozzles.
Mm-hmm. To that, my own personal experience, it's, because that's what's going to happen is Amazon's eventually going to have to outsource this to a third-party company to kind of work on their behalf. So just for example, what the call center job I worked at before, it was basically tied to the health insurance marketplace, the Obamacare system. So basically we were the mediators between the government system, who manages the exchange, and the health insurance companies. So we basically had to do everything and anything. We had to, of course, sign people up. We had to submit conflict resolutions.
Having the wonderful shield that was the government behind you. That's the thing.
Yeah. So we had to be we essentially had to be the great big middleman and be everything and everything. It's like the insurance companies would give people the runaround all the time. It's like, oh, you have a problem with your plan, call the marketplace. I'm sorry, we don't know what's wrong with your plan. Call your insurance company. They just told me to call you. So that's what's going to happen here. This is going to become a great big middleman, monkey in the middle mess.
Yep. Okay, I think we've broken Romney long enough. All right, Romney, go ahead. Go ahead.
What can really be said here? This is a dumb idea. It really isn't.
To point out, the only thing that we've debated on is the Amazon thing, and I want to get back to the Walmart thing, honestly, because that's creepier.
Yeah, it's just the Walmart thing. They seem to have other things. Like, oh, the person delivering the food has a one-time key that gets them into the house.
Yeah,
but it's just the whole thing in general. I mean, barring the obvious, ramifications, lost pets, rogue employees breaking in, especially when they're just like, oh yeah, use this to let family members into your home, or other services like pet sitters and dog walkers and this, that, and the other. Looking at this, what I also see here is that this is going to make your shipping and handling go up by leaps and bounds, because if they're going to have a bunch of things to cover that liability, who's going to pay for it? You!
Exactly.
That's right.
Because, I mean, we didn't even mention this, but the Amazon Key service, so you buy the kit. So not only do you sign up into the service, and I'm sure it's going to have like because here's the thing, Prime has a bare minimum service fee that you have to pay every year. This thing already has an initial $250 deposit for the camera and the compatible smart lock. Okay. So already $250 for those 2 items, 3 including the key, kind of thing. So at that point, you could already guarantee this is going to go up and up and up, especially when we start seeing lawsuits happening in this. And look, Alex was right. The most minute thing can happen here, and it's on the homeowner, not necessarily on, like, insurance is going to justify, like, You bought this, so here's your waiver that you understood the risks when you bought into this service, and we are not responsible. That's gonna happen.
Yeah, there's just so many problems. I mean, because I live in a neighborhood that is, although it's gotten better in recent years, it's not what you would call an ideal neighborhood. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a well-intentioned idea of, oh yeah, put the package inside so you don't have to carry it in to try to mitigate people stealing it. Honestly, the lockbox idea that Alex proposed is a much better idea.
Yeah.
You mount it to the porch or you mount it to the wall. You have a passcode that's a one-time passcode that the delivery person puts it in. That's a much better, much safer idea than, oh, well, let's open up the door to our home. Who cares if Mittens runs off and gets eaten by a coyote or something? Who cares if the delivery driver had a really bad day and is on their last day and they know they're getting fired, so they're going to go in and steal, like, this priceless heirloom? It's just...
Or come in and, like poop on your rug. Because that's also a likely thing that could happen. Like, dude, people do weird crap on their last day, especially if they're getting fired.
Yeah, so this just raises so many questions, so many problems. I mean, I can see it working maybe in certain cities or like gated communities, maybe. But even then,
I don't even buy that, Romney, because the communities that actually have these things, let's just take the communities that are using the drone, okay? To my knowledge, it's East Coast and West Coast mostly that have this service available to them because it's only available in those areas they have the facilities, okay? So East Coast and West Coast. So let's just take two cities as an example, Los Angeles and New York. Are either of these neighborhoods that you trust these kinds of services to be in place? I barely trust my neighborhood, people, and I'm like in a suburb-esque environment.
Yeah,
okay? I love my neighbors. They're great guys. I don't trust them already when I have to leave a package outside because you never know. The mailman might have accidentally put the wrong name on it. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the problem here. If you can't... Okay. If we lived in an idealistic Gene Roddenberry Star Trek society, this wouldn't be a problem. But you want to know the other problem with that logical argument? You'd be making these things, the things that you want, out of the replicator.
Yep.
So you need Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's an Amazon brand replicator. I mean, let's face it, if they come up with that technology, it's gonna be Amazon.
I think we just found our episode title. Amazon, just make a damn replicator.
Yeah, honestly, looking at this, the Onion article summarizes it perfectly. It's like, Amazon's new product gives you the option to have the delivery driver just shoot you in the face.
Yeah, so this is the Onion story that Alex brought up, because like this is because, guys, I hate to say it, but the Onion has it right. This is home invasion, all right? So then at that point, if you can justify this, all it takes is for one guy down on his luck who just so happens to have your smart key come in and rob the house, and then, well, now he can sue you because even though he entered your home, he now has at least a lawyer's case to be able to go to court and say, well, he assaulted me improperly. Okay?
Yeah.
Or
that's not even raising
bit me in the butt improperly, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and that's not even raising like the possibility of whether or not it would be possible to jailbreak and maybe hack into these smart keys and finding ways to trigger them.
And that's the other part that we have to consider, is that once the technology gets made, everybody, it's only a matter of time before it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like even in the optimistic scenario where Alex came up with the box, you can't update the box. You can't patch the box. Well, you
can if you still have
not in that case.
You can if it's still like a digital connection. I mean, right? And I mean, look, I know like a lockbox on your porch isn't going to be foolproof. There's obviously the potential, like if it's digital, it can be hacked. If it's a padlock, it can be broken. But I'd still rather have that than letting complete random people into my home.
Here's the flaw in your argument already, and I'm going to use your own family as an example. I'm not going to say names. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you have that patch. What would be required to have that patch? A constant connection. There are going to be people who don't want to give that constant connection. and therefore will be outdated and then be broken. That's the issue with all of this, is because unfortunately, as good law-abiding citizens, we have done the criminal's job in this system. And we've done it actually really well. It's kind of frightening how well we've done the criminal's job today.
Yeah, plus when you really think about it, if you're casing a house and you're thinking, okay, which house is a house that I can steal from that has a lot of money? Ooh, they have a fancy smart lock. Thank you for making your home a target.
Pretty much. Or as our chat just kind of pointed out, steal your stuff and then just sell it on eBay, because eBay don't care. eBay will just take it. So okay, we gotta wrap this thing up, but I'm gonna put this out here because I do want to get to the Walmart thing. Like, as much as the packages from Amazon is a little creepy, dropping off your perishable goods is even creepier to me, because I can't help but wonder if, like, you'd occasionally get that one guy who is just that thirsty and opens up one of your Mountain Dew bottles. And it just so happens that he has a cold.
That's the least of your concerns, really.
I know, that's the absolute least of my concerns. I have many, many others. And yet these are viable services, or at least these are services that are being considered in this society. I think Bender said it best. We're boned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes, people, we all hate going grocery shopping, but, you know, go grocery shopping. Don't sign up for a delivery service where random people are going to deliver your groceries.
Look, I hate Black Friday as much as the next guy. That's why I do my Black Friday shopping months in advance, so I don't have to go out on Black Friday. I've had to go out on Black Friday once in the last 5 to 10 years, and it was just to get some milk for my baby. That's it. And already that was too much for me. So I guess the moral of the story here, everybody, is we don't live in a Star Trek society. Otherwise, Amazon would have thought better and made a damn replicator. Final thoughts before we move on.
2 words. Dead horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 words. Lawsuit. Alex? Okay.
I got nothing more to say.
Yep. And I wish it only got better from here, but unfortunately the last story that we have tonight is more of the same, because people might remember a couple of weeks ago we reported, I believe a couple of weeks ago was when we talked about Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Harvey Weinstein / I can't remember the other guy's name, the creator of Screen Junkies.
Andy Signor.
Andy Signor. We had that whole situation. Unfortunately, I wish that could have been the end of it, everybody, but unfortunately it isn't, as Loud House showrunner Chris Savino has been fired from Nickelodeon for sexual harassment allegations. So we don't know the details on this so much. All we have is the statement to work with, but let's go ahead and just go over that really quick. In an internal memo, this is not the quote, but in an internal memo, Seema Zargami, president of Viacom's Nickelodeon Group, promised employees. Sorry, that's not the one I was looking for. So let's see.
Yeah, the memo is just below that paragraph.
Savino had first been suspended by the network when allegations first surfaced. A dozen women have accused Savino of inappropriate behavior in a story first reported by the website Cartoon Brew. Their accusations, which date back several years, include unwanted sexual advances, as well as threats of retribution after the end of consensual relationships. That's the part that sticks to me a little bit, is that, you know, they had relationships with this guy, even though I'm sure there's a dozen women in here. Are you telling me that this guy never had a reputation by that point? And you had a relationship with him that made that so much more worse. And now this guy's getting fired by Nickelodeon, and Nickelodeon actually put out a full statement on the matter. I'm not going to read it because it's literally like 4 or 5 paragraphs long, but suffice to say they want to make a safer environment for those involved. and Savino was not making this a safe environment in any case. And so he has since been terminated from his employment at Nickelodeon. And I'm guessing if he's already been terminated from Nickelodeon, that's probably going to blacklist him with other Hollywood companies, especially animation companies, after they hear about the sexual harassment allegations. So I'm going to start, obviously, from the beginning, or at least the first place where we can start off with this. How many people are actually face palming because this is yet another sexual harassment problem? This is not a rape problem, by the way, because we can't, all we have is sexual harassment. This is another sexual problem within the entertainment industry.
Well, I wouldn't really call it facepalm worthy, just more, it's just a case of another, again, as I said it before when we covered the Weinstein case, the fact that Harvey Weinstein's been taken down has more or less opened the floodgates. You basically toppled the king. Now everyone is basically coming forward with what's been going on. And sadly, the comments of the Variety article that we're lifting this from is, well, depressing to say the least, given the amount of people trying to defend Savino, ignoring the fact that this was Nickelodeon and Viacom conducting an internal investigation, and at the end of said investigation, they decided to dismiss Savino. Yeah. So it's not the case of, oh, because a lot of people are saying that the accusations are false, but here it's clear that they launched an investigation, and from that investigation, they determined, yeah, it's best to let this guy go. And so it shows that, hey, there was an investigation. People who are saying that these accusations were fake, get off your high horse. But it's, I hate to say it, I am kind of numb to it just because of how many allegations are coming out, but it's important that they are coming out. I don't want to diminish that in any way. It is important that these facts are being brought to light, because the sooner more people know about this kind of crap that's going on, the sooner we can actually go about, you know, fixing the problem.
Well, and the one thing that we can at least say about the Nickelodeon investigation, because yes, there are going to be defenders. There are always going to be defenders of, like, either friends or family of the person involved, whether it be Savino, whether it be Signor, whether it be Weinstein. There will always be defenders of it. But I'm at least going to hand a proper handshake out to Nickelodeon, because in the statement we actually we figure out that there was an internal investigation. And look, Nickelodeon, I believe their base studio is still Florida, right? That's where they're solely based out of. So if they're going to fire off Savino, they had reasons to be able to do it. They had enough evidence in their investigation internally to say, yes, this is a problem. It exists. We need to get rid of it. And Savino's the cause, kind of thing. So at that point, I'm going to at least applaud them, because here's the thing. Now that we have Weinstein and Signor and Savino, there's going to be lots more like this. I hate to say it, guys. We're going to get a lot more accusations in the coming future of sexual harassment. And the sad part of the sad reality about this is there are going to be false ones lined up with the real ones. And the false ones will be more than the real ones. So it's now more important than ever that these investigations happen, that they be thorough, and that they go through. And if enough evidence is presented, you get rid of the bad element there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because as much, look, and I have two witnesses here. I am not downplaying the concept of sexual harassment. Okay, sexual harassment in the workplace is unacceptable in my eyes. And same thing with what Weinstein was doing, and same thing with what Signor was doing. All of that is unacceptable. I also find it unacceptable that people tend to take advantage of recent cases and situations and tend to play themselves into the narrative. And therefore, we now have a dozen new false cases over the one that actually might be legit.
Yeah,
okay?
But that is kind of the reason why we still have due process. I mean, a lot of people may complain about it letting criminals go free, but that is why we have that process. Our country operates under the presumption of innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and that is how we operate. And so, yes, you may have the occasional false allegations that cause a lot of problems. I know that was a similar case to what happened with Kevin Clash, which is why he left Sesame Street and is no longer the voice of Elmo. But there's a reason we have the process that we have. It's to prevent the worst case scenario of people being falsely accused and unable to defend themselves, because, well, that's what the Romans did. And we realized, what the founding fathers realized, that didn't work. And so, yes, the possibility of false accusations and allegations is present. But all the more reason why we should abide by the concept of due process and making sure that we are investigating the allegations thoroughly. Because if someone is lying, if you press them hard enough unless even really good liars, people will slip up along the way, because it's hard to keep a whole bunch of facts straight in your mind. That's something that gets difficult, especially with spies that have to have completely different identities. It's hard to keep a number of lies intact in your own mind. You're gonna slip up. And so that is the other part of due process, is that in that investigation, the truth will eventually come out.
Yeah, and what I'm actually trying to paint out here, and I may have not come across right, I'm happy that the investigation itself happened, because there's also been situations in the past where you could dare say, after the first accusation, people were just let go, an investigation wasn't even done, so you immediately label the person, and all of a sudden we find out, oh wait, he didn't do it, some other guy in the office did. Well, he's still fired. So you have cases like that, and then you also have cases like, well, unfortunately, Weinstein, where people turned a blind eye, okay, because it was Harvey Weinstein. So at that point, I'm glad that now, that's what I'm trying to say here. I'm glad that investigations are happening and that investigations are going through. That's the due process here. That's what we need to actually have happen. These things need to be taken care of. The other thing I would also say is, for all the people who actually do make the false accusations, because look, everybody looks for one way to get their 15 minutes of fame. Okay. Everybody does. I also hope with these investigations that people do realize, if you make the false accusations, there are penalties for that too. And they ain't fun either. So be careful about that. Because that's the one thing that I am worried about now, that unfortunately is the can of worms that opens up with the Weinstein situation. Is now we're going to start seeing a lot more of this stuff, whether it be sexual harassment, actual rape, things like that. These are going to start happening a little bit more regularly, especially in like the next 6 months to a year. And I want to make sure that we get all of the legitimate cases, because those guys, we need them out. We need to change the industry, and this is how you do it. Not only that, but you go over and look at the better product. But Alex, you've been kind of quiet on the matter. Do you have anything else to add on this?
Well, I mean, regarding the social impact, you've said it all. I'm thinking more of just wondering what this also means for the show. I'm not a particular fan of it. I've watched episodes here and there. It's all right. But I also kind of just wonder what this means for the show on Nickelodeon, if it will still continue without Savino. I hate to see so many people lose their jobs because their head showrunner was a creep.
Yeah. What I have a feeling is going to happen is kind of like what happened with Screen Junkies, where there was a staff in place. I'm sure that so if he was the main producer, I'm sure he had an associate producer or somebody else further down that line that understood his vision and understood what he was trying to do with it. They'll probably get put in charge to see if they can keep the show running. And if they can't, then Nickelodeon will axe the show, kind of thing. Because that's really the aspect I think that Nickelodeon cares about, is that, if they just barely toss this guy, is it marketable for them to do it? Okay, well, maybe it's marketable if we bring in the next guy who worked with him the most, but is a good employee. But if not, then we'll cut our losses roughly. That's what I see them doing. It's kind of the same thing with Screen Junkies. Somebody else is going to get brought into Signor's place and try to run the same vision that Signor had, but with, less sexual harassment and or rape. I think that's the best way to be able to go about it too. So as much as that, I'm a big guy for, if you created it, you should be able to engineer the vision and all that. But if you also make mistakes along the way, then you kind of lose that right. And you can't blame anybody but yourself. And so that's kind of the sad reality here, is Chris Savino has lost that right through his own actions. And yeah, I really don't think there's much else we can add on this story. Unfortunately, it looks like the things have been handled. Nickelodeon's handled things internally. I think Loud House still has a few episodes left to be able to run in whatever season it's in. So at that point, as soon as that run's done, then we'll see what happens with the show. And
yeah, looking at it, season 3 is on the docket because it's in its second season that'll continue airing. Season 3 is scheduled to premiere early 2018, so it looks like they're still going to keep going. It just will be a case that they'll bring in another showrunner and see if they can keep it going. And given how rerun happy Nickelodeon is, even if they aren't able to make more episodes, they'll still probably play a number of them as often as they can.
Nickelodeon, where syndication is king.
Yep.
Especially some SpongeBob syndication. All right, and that's pretty much all of the stories that we have tonight. So thank you guys so much for sticking around with us for this podcast. But we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So if you liked what we had to say in these stories, or if you have differing opinions and want to be able to express those to us, for the Shadow Blazer, how do they reach out to you and talk to you about these stories? Or maybe even
you can find me here. You can find me here on YouTube. Shadow Blazer 3000 is my channel, and I do produce anime content. I'm going to have something up this weekend. I was actually working on it right before the show, and I'll finish it up tomorrow and put it up. And in the meantime, if you also want to follow me on social media and always be informed of when I put up a new video, follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
And yeah, continue to support him too, because I believe you are on the cusp of 500 subscribers, are you not?
That's right.
You are almost there. So make sure to subscribe to the Shadow Blazers content so that he can get to an even 500 by the end of this year. And Stephen Romney, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, you can always find me on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me at my second home at vid.me/StudioGhost. I am also on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe. And I am on Twitter at RomneyReviews, no apostrophe S. And for this week's Romney's recommendation, it is actually a game that I found myself enjoying, thanks in large part to the new video game store DVD Game Exchange, and that is Silent Hill Shattered Memories. I was playing this pretty much all night on Halloween night, and I greatly enjoyed it. What makes this game different from the other entries in the Silent Hill franchise is that as you are playing, it psychologically profiles you as the player, making note of things you're looking at in the environment, as well as providing various questionnaires that can basically affect the way certain characters, certain environments, and certain enemies look in the game. I have not beaten it yet, but I'm pretty dang close. But that is this week's Romney's recommendation, Silent Hill Shattered Memories. I have the PS2 version. It was also available for PSP and Wii. I don't know if Konami's re-released it on PSN. I don't think they have in the US, but that is this week's recommendation, Silent Hill Shattered Memories.
And also, you just barely released a brand new episode of Rhapsody in Cinema. So not only is the latest Monster Clash out, you guys can check that out on the channel, but you can also check out the latest Rhapsody in Cinema, which just so happens to star as we discuss the Abyss Special Edition. We covered the Special Edition version, so you guys can check that out. Is that enough needless plugging, or do I need to keep going on?
No, I think we're good.
All right, cool. So, and then if you guys want to reach out to me, the best ways to be able to do so, first of all, you can follow me on Twitter at Drak2326. You can check out my YouTube content aside from the podcast, which is Let's Play content, game reviews, vlogs, pretty much opinions on whatever's going on in the gaming world, what's ever going on in the geek world. Specifically, next week, I'm actually going to be covering BlizzCon 2017. So if you guys want to know my opinions as we go along, that's the place to be able to go see that. But also you can follow me or you can follow the channel on Facebook at DrakLP. So you can check out all of those areas. If you want to support the podcast, the best way that we ask, please, that you support it is you go to our main page on Podomatic, which is geekyweek.podomatic.com. That's where our RSS feed that is. Also, that's where our iTunes page is, or at least a link to our iTunes page. You can look up Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions and the GNRO podcast on iTunes to be able to find the feeds there. And also, if you want to be able to submit stories to us as well as feedback, because we always do appreciate your critical feedback, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And finally, if you want to follow us on social media, the podcast social media is literally the same thing for both Twitter and Facebook at GeekyNRO. All you have to do is look up Geeky NRO, and you'll get up-to-the-minute information on when we're going live, the stuff we're going to be talking about, especially since we have end-of-the-year content where we're going to be bringing back some old favorites as well as maybe even tackling some new ones. You guys have lots to be able to look into, and we always appreciate you guys supporting the podcast in whatever ways you're able to. We really do appreciate it, but that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. Thank you guys so much for joining us as we had a very interesting evening. We started off super, super serious, and then we ended on kind of a lighter note and then went right back into the Prozac budget. How appropriate for Geek News. And so that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching. And of course, we will be back next week for even more Geek News reviews and opinions. So for me, for Alex, and for Romney, we'll see you guys next time. But first, wow. Okay. There's one other thing I actually want to be able to do. So one of our fellow panelists on the podcast, Brenton Volley, actually just barely had a very happy, friendly day today. He got married. And so I would actually like to encourage all of you guys to also reach out to him on Twitter at bvolley01 and congratulate him, as well as pester him for why he had to miss the podcast tonight, because he could have contributed something to the Amazon replicator. But with that said, for me, for Alex, and for Romney, we'll see you guys next time. Amazon replicator.